Okay, so before the break, we started looking at JavaFX in Java code. We looked at FXML the other day in preview mode. And talking about the basic conventional GUI, what that should look like. There's one other thing I was hoping to get to before the break and didn't quite make it. And our first quick test example, we just do a couple labels up here. We're going to make it look like a normal GUI because that is definitely missing from our the conventional GUIs. I shouldn't say normal. There is no such thing as normal, but the conventional appearance for GUI, like what NetBeans looks like in the background, main menu and the toolbar, then all the main content, and then a status bar at the bottom. We want to get those things every time. But another one that I don't think our book shows, or really any textbook, because I've always been so displeased. I've read a lot of textbooks looking for it, and it's for some reason standard in academia to not teach GUIs or something. I don't know, but those words are pressed pretty close together. We want to space things out. White space is important. Right? That's one of the key critical concepts in visual communication, the importance of white space. You don't want to jam everything there as close together as close as it can be. Or we're programmers, right? All this white space in the Java code here is optional. We don't need that, but it'd be really, really hard to work with if we didn't put it there. All the indenting and spacing things out, that is completely optional. We could write as one long line, but that's kind of what our GUI looks like right now, just one long line. So spacers require another type of object. This would work. So here on the H box, it goes with our container. So in our containers, so HBX container, we can set padding. And notice that the class type it's expecting insets. You can think of that as like little spacers. Right? Like if we're laying new tile in the bathroom floor, there's little plastic spacers that we picked up at Home Depot as well, so that everything's evenly spaced. So it's kind of like the virtual version of those. They're not empty. We want to do some new insets, and then we need 4 numbers: top, bottom, left, right. Not sure what order those would go in, but we can easily test, right? So if we say like 5 and 50, 25 and 100, we should be able to tell pretty quickly which one's which side, right? Something very, very obvious. Try to do something very, very obvious. We're missing one side because there's nothing down below. We'd have to switch to a VLOX to get down below, but we should have the left, top, and right, and then whichever one's missing should be obvious, whether it's the 5, 50, 25, 100. So doing a little obvious test like that, then import those. Yeah, I'll run that and then do the second one, because we actually need 2 things. The downside of having all this control, in Python, we wouldn't have nearly as much control or nearly as much things in here, but we don't have as much control. We have to do 2 things. So, I came way over from the left. There's nothing in between them though. So padding is outside of our box. And it should be 5 pixels down from the top. I don't know why it's not 5 pixels down from the top. But it starts at the top and goes clockwise. So 5 on the top, 50 on the right, 25 on the bottom, 100 on the left. We can tell the 100 on the left from that, but it wasn't quite what I was expecting. So I'm gonna, okay, we see that now. So let's say 12, 24, so top left, maybe 24 here, and 12 over here. There's a few numbers in there. Okay, there we go. You can see it moved a little bit further down and not nearly as far over. So it's spaced, the container is spaced out with padding. So that's opposite of how we use the word padding in CSS. Right? For those who've had the SDEV 153 class or the 155, we're revamping them. So SDEV 153 is being replaced by 155. But right now, both of them are consistently running until. So there, padding is inside of our container, but here padding is outside of our container. So words are not used consistently. There's not standards on what it means to call something padding. And between these things is spacing. And it does go in the container. So container, whoops. Our H box, and we can set spacing. I wanted the predictive list there. Set spacing, and notice spacing only takes in one number. So all things have to be spaced out evenly. And that is a preferred number. So it's like frame rate in a game engine. That's what we want, but don't try to do that. For everybody that studied game, ever looked at game development, if we try to do a steady pulse on the game engine, like say 60 frames per second, so everything needs to fit, and I'm just going to say 17, use the whole number because it fits better in a sentence. Everything has to be, each frame of the game has to be 17 milliseconds. Some frames of the game are going to be empty for 15 of those 17 milliseconds. And other frames of the game are not going to fit in 17 milliseconds. And those ones that are empty most of the time, our brain will start focusing on that, and we lose the smoothness of the animation because of all there's more emptiness than activity. And if something doesn't fit inside of that 17 seconds, then we miss some of our instructions and the game crashes altogether. So that's a good example of it. We can't, it doesn't work well if we hard code in like it has to be this. So we go with preferred things. We would like it to be something, and spacing's like that. We would like it to be 12 pixels between them, but if not able to get 12 pixels, just try to get as close as you can to 12 pixels. So preferences, we don't do, there are still like a set max, set min, those things, methods still exist, but always try to go with preferences. And if it's something like spacing where there's only a place to enter a number, or when we created our instance, there's only a place to enter a number, that's a preferred value. We want that number, but that does not mean we're going to get that number. Trying to be very, very strict with the machine like that doesn't always work out because the machine can't always agree. So there we go, that's no spaced out. We're definitely going to want that when we get to the picture, right? We don't want file and edit to look like one word when we do that in you. I was hoping to get to that before the break, but we'll need those two things. Yeah, now I guess I'll just start here on my picture and kind of work down. Up here at the top, we usually have the name of the file. NetBeans doesn't have it because there's in tabs. What's something that would have it up there at the top? Word does. new blank document. And we can see what we're working on because right up there at the top is a new blank document. I think Sublime will, even though it still has tabs. Yeah. Now, if I make this one, save this, delete, yeah, that looks like a good name for it. Oh, oops. And then Control N, make another one, even though there's tabs up there in the top. In the title bar, we have an icon and then that file. Or if we go to the other tab, we can see exactly what file we're working on. That's one of the conventions. People know to look there. So that's why I went ahead and showed that. Went ahead and threw this in there. Our book doesn't show that. Or at least the previous edition of the book didn't show that. Didn't reread the latest edition. It's a lot of pages in that book. But that's where we want to put the file name, which that's pretty easy to do. We're in a class and, well, we saw how to write files, right? We saw file writing, we saw quite a bit about that. So all we need is a place to put the file path. Private, you're probably thinking string at first, but remember file type does have a particular something like get file name or get file path. So it might be a little bit better to do this instead of a string. File is I'll go ahead and create it, a new file, and I'll just make something up. Oops, I'll call it testfile.sdev. That sounds like a good one. So we have some sort of file name there. And then when we go down here, class example, that was weird. Class example, and then plus file dot get absolute path, get name, get path. Okay. So like we just looked at it as Sublime for something like a text editor that a programmer is going to be using, probably want that whole file path. The programmer is going to pay attention to that. If it's Microsoft Word, you probably only want to put the name there because people never look at where they store those anyway. I don't know how many times over the years in the tutoring lab here I've had to have people go into the open recents button and then open it up and save it someplace different so they can find their file. Y'all have probably done that too. And not to say anything bad because I've done that many times myself. It's like, I have no idea where that's saved at. I know what I called it. So you can see up there, then we get the file name, the file path. And if you do it from the file data type, you can just pull the string out. Your first instinct is probably to put a string there, but to work with that file, like to read and write it, you need it in the file object. So might as well use that. A little tip I found over the years is, I don't know how many, I'm not even sure how many years I always did that as a string. And then somewhere later in the code, use that string to create a file object. Probably several places in the code use that string to create a file object. Then eventually just realized, like, why don't I just pull the string from the file object? That's a little bit cleaner. So that's the first part in the picture on those standards. I guess I'll work down. That way we have stuff to put together. I'll get rid of the labels. Actually, I'll get rid of all this and we'll rebuild this. But this is going to go on GitHub for a class example. So I will put it over in an empty file. original example .txt, and that way it's on GitHub with the project. It doesn't just disappear on us. Okay. So first thing we need is probably that main menu up at the top. And there's several objects which are not mentioned in our textbook. And JavaFX changes quickly, so keep this is available in a video, so you'll be able to watch the recording and refer to this. The textbook is out of date, and y'all are probably far enough along now. You've encountered that a few times where you go to look stuff up and you're finding out that the tutorial you found is out of date. It usually doesn't show up at the very first, right? Like our print statement in Python hasn't changed since 1989. So any tutorial we find for that is still valid. But as we get further and further along, the updates in the language will adjust some of that stuff. So you'll know where the video is. I'll make sure you'll have access to where I back those up. So we have a menu bar item. So that's a special type of HBox to hold the menu bar, or special type of box. We'll set it to, by default it's horizontal, but we can change it to vertical to do a hamburger menu. So it's what holds our menu items. So I'll call it menu bar, or actually I'll follow what I was doing another menu bar, our main menu. So MB for the Hungarian notation, and then I'll just call it main. Oh, I am sorry. Thought I was sharing the screen. I didn't look at the TV. How long had it not been sharing? Okay, so I copied and pasted that other stuff over here. So I created a text file and copied and pasted that original stuff over here to get it out of the way. Because that was just a quick pass. That way it'll still be on GitHub to refer to. So we need a menu bar is the special type of container to hold a menu. Otherwise it's going to look like regular Java syntax, and that'll be a new menu bar. And go ahead and handle the imports. And inside of that, well, menu bar, we're going to put menus inside of that container to hold menus. So we need a new menu. I'll call it mn file. Is a new menu. And well, if we look at the main menu here in NetBeans, we kind of want a label on those, right? Those are the ones we do want actually spelled out in words. So I'll call this one file, like the name implies. And then we need items for that file menu, like over in NetBeans. This button is just the menu. And then we have menu items or menus that we can put inside of that. So this can hold either menus or menu items. Menu item, I'll call it mi new. Is a new menu item. Hopefully none of the names are too confusing here, and well, from what I just put there, you can tell what it's going to be called. And see that reusability of key values. So new as a string is what shows on there. New in Hungarian notation is what we call the button, the special type of button that goes in the menu. New in, and then new as a file, we can make a new file type of data and call it new as we adjust and confirm that you want to save before opening the new one and all that sort of stuff that we don't have time for in the classroom. The logic for it should make sense, be fairly straightforward when you start working through the process. But there's a bunch of, it's just kind of a long process. So even though it's an easy one to put together, it doesn't fit in the classroom very well because it would take up the whole night to get all those confirmations and stuff. But they're really easy. Then we can do a couple of those. I'm gonna just copy that and paste and along with new, we probably want open and save. Bare minimum, right? Then we can repeat that for an edit menu, a view menu, a help menu, all of them we want. Could probably copy and paste and do them really quick here, but I'm just gonna do one so that the example isn't cluttered. This is gonna go on GitHub so y'all can look at this as an example, because what's in our textbook is out of date. What's in every textbook is out of date. There was nothing to replace the GUI section with whenever they moved it to open JFX. So textbooks just left their old stuff in there, and it's every Java textbook you look at seems to be out of date now. They have JavaFX from 2015 or 2016. So try to keep this clear. So you might want to follow along, download a copy from GitHub pretty quick and add its comments to keep track of the stuff. There's no telling when people will get around to put it on YouTube, because there's newer stuff than this to put on YouTube. The industry's going to what we've been doing in general already, the JSP. That's why we looked at JSP like the first day or two of class. We just use HTML, and if we want a standalone desktop app, we throw our web application into Docker. We have got Docker just displaying as a desktop instead of in a browser. Yeah, now we can go ahead and put this on here. So to load them in, it's just like before, only it's not the same. Before, the ones in the textbook all say get children. That's why I wanted to make sure and do this one first, because this is different. File, the menus aren't necessarily going to be children, because of that implies a ranking. And there's not necessarily a ranking for menus, there's an organization. It's more like the graph picture drawn here, not the tree. This is what we would think of with a tree, and that falls apart as a menu. Because we don't want to go through all of the, we don't want to have to go, children have that order. So we don't want to have to go through new and open before we get to the save. We want to be able to get right to the save menu. So we want to get rid of that internal order to it. So instead of get children, we get items, which hopefully also makes sense to the name, because in a menu bar, we put menus, and then in a menu, we put menu items. So for the file menu, we want to get items. I guess the big thing for pattern matching is, notice items go into menus. So we have get items. And then we have an add all method again. We're going to add new menu item open right afterwards, and menu item save right after that. Then, yeah, I guess we're ready for the menu bar. And at this point, we've seen the get children. That's one our textbook keeps having. And menus, which are menu items, have the get items. So on our menu bar, which holds menus, we have get menus. And well, right now there's only one to cut down on clutter, but the rest of them would be exact copies of that. Does everybody see the patterns there? See some patterns popping out in those naming conventions. Hopefully. And now, I'll just go ahead and throw it in here. I usually do one extra step and put it in the main menu as well. But we got our file name at the top, Then our main menu. Click on it and get all that. Now that you've seen a couple keywords, it'll be easier to Google the rest of the parts, the separators, and just start looking at menu item in the Java docs. Really easy to find, right? Always look at Java docs first. JavaFX menu item, and it goes right to the docs, and you'll see all the different things all of that stuff, and subclasses and what goes together. But starting towards a couple of keywords. But we want things below that. So instead of putting that right in there, I'm going to create a V box to put that in. Vertical box instead of horizontal, because our menu goes at the top, and right below that we have a toolbar, then all our main content. Actually, I'm going to skip the V box. There's something else that might be more useful. I think it's border paint. Let me double check it, make sure that's the one I want. V-Box. Border pane, yes. So I'm going to make a border pane container, and let me draw the picture on the board. Border pane. Must just on the camera, yeah. So border pane is the one that's split up into segments like this. So we have the top section, we have a top section, a bottom section, left section, right section, and middle section. So that is a nice one to lay out our GUIs like this. Because then we can do the menu and toolbars, stick those in the V box, and then stick that up at the top. Our main content here, do like navigation here, extra controls here, and then status bar down at the bottom. So that's the one we're ultimately going to want. Might as well jump down to it now. So again, Hungarian notation, BP main. It goes in new border pane. And border pane is a little bit different than the other ones because we don't want to just do set children, because where do the children go? Right? We don't want to just get children because there's lots of places the children can go in a border pane. The rest, anything else that has pane, we have lots of different types of panes. Scene builder, you would see the full list of things called panes. But border pane, we have those segments, so we want to use the set thing, set stuff, BP main dot set. Well, you can see bottom and center there, but the only thing we have so far is the top. So I'll set the top for the MB main. I keep using the word main. Y'all are the ones that would look at this as reference. Do you want me to use something different than main? That was just blowing out because I'm used to nesting things. I got a shrug here. As long as you remember to look at the data type, not necessarily the reference. We do that because software I build these days is considerably larger than anything we look in a classroom. So there would be border panes nested inside of that border pane. We'd have a main one and subsets. So I'm just used to doing that for the top level. And then that's what goes on our scene. Border pane, I'll stick with main unless somebody wants me to change it. I don't see anything in the chat room. Just got some shrugs in the classroom. So I'll stick with that because that kind of comes out more naturally on my end. I guess it does help to imply that we can nest things in there. So it looks exactly the same as it did a moment ago, but we know there's some invisible stuff there that's going to help us organize things. So I guess another really easy thing to list would be a status. I'll jump down to the bottom and set up the status, which is kind of like what we just did. I like to keep things in order. I like to comment here, main menu. So we get our main menu stuff, and then we can put in the toolbar. Obviously, we could get by with mixing and matching the order as long as it's all ready by the end. But over the years, I found it's a lot easier to debug if the order in the code matches the order on the GUI. Back to that, the criticisms in event-driven programming we looked at it earlier. Always try to keep those in mind. If you know what problems are most likely to occur, you want to be ready for them at every step along the way, and that way they won't be so disastrous when they do occur. Then our main content. And then our status bar. And the status bar is really a collection of labels. Probably do at least usually 3. I'm just gonna do 1 for now. Well, actually, it would be easy to do 3, wouldn't it? So let's make a label. I'll call it left status. LBL left status is a new label. Status ready, dot, dot, dot. Import that, and then we usually have a couple of things going, right? So label LBL middle status. Again, it's a new label, and in the middle, well, we can see it on NetBeans right now. The progress usually goes in the middle. Progress. Nothing yet. I guess that happened. That's something that happens when the one in the middle actively changes. And then our status bar on the right. Label LBL right status. And I just changed that left to camel case, or uppercase L. It's still Hungarian notation. But actually, proper Hungarian notation is a new label. And the right one often has configurations. Configurations, default. And like down in the bottom right of NetBeans, it tells us the new line, a carriage return new line, not just a new line. It tells us what type of line feeds we have going in our code. But there's multiple status bars. Well, then we can just, they go lengthwise, right? Left, middle, or one right after the other. So I'll create a new H box. Actually, I can probably copy that earlier one. We copy all of this over to the start of the get all. There we go. Now I'm not so worried about just deleting that trivial example we started with. So our insets, status bars are small. So I'm just going to cut that in half and do 6. That's the left, isn't it? Well, I'm going to leave it like it was. It didn't give us much room. Import that. Space them out more than 12, though. Let's say 50. I'm just going to guess and see what that looks like. And then when we add all, H box goes left to right, and our labels are named from left to right. So label left status, label, oops, get the Zoom thumbnails out of my way, label middle status, and label right status. And then in our border pane, status bar is usually down at the bottom. So BP main dot set bottom to Xbox containers, not a good one, but I'm going to put it in here just to remind you all about something. HBX container was from the generic example. I don't want to use that name. So I could retype it a bunch of times, but remember we have refactoring options. So anything that calls itself an IDE better have this button on there somewhere. And usually under right click, you can go to refactor and there's the rename for the variables. So let's call this HBX status. Status, if I can spell it correctly. And probably rename it in comments because that would apply for JavaFX, or sorry, Java docs as well. It's getting that in a classroom, but you want to write those along the way because documentation is boring. You don't want to finish the fun part and realize you only have documentation left to do. You don't want to finish the fun part and only have boring part left to do. So work on the documentation along the way. Besides, the best time to write up the paragraph described for the user manual on how to use your software is as soon as you finish debugging it. And then you only have one paragraph at a time to write, and then you finish the fun part, and it might just be a little bit of editing on it. But you don't want to run out of fun. You don't want to finish the fun part and realize you only have boring part left to do. That's where we end up with projects that we don't have any documentation on. It's like the fun part's over and nobody wants to do the boring part. That looks a little bit big for the status bar. So maybe I'll cut those down. So instead of 24, let's say 4. There you go. Remember clockwise. Start at the top and go clockwise. And that gives us a status bar, and then that is just a string. Writing a method to change the string on that is really, really easy. So what you would probably want to do is give those global scope. Right? We need to be able to access them from anywhere in our code so we can access them in other methods. So global scope is my first thought. As a parameter to pass into your method isn't difficult either. Whichever one, I usually go with global scope, but passing in a parameter is a little bit easier. But you're definitely going to want to have access from that to that from everywhere. Because every time you do something, right, that's when the status bar changes it. Status bar needs to constantly be telling the status. But that's really, really easy. Just throw up a string saying what you're currently doing. You all know what goes in a status bar, and you already wrote many, many strings to the console. So writing a string to this is exactly the same. It's set text. If you didn't already guess that, label left status dot set text, and just do that in every single method in your status bar is ready to go. Toolbar is the other one big one I wanted to get to tonight. This main content, that's going to vary drastically. I would suggest starting with the text area. Maybe, yeah, we'll probably get time for a text area. Pictures and buttons are a little bit different. So I want to make sure and cover these. This is another one that's definitely not covered there in the book. So button, I'll just call it, well, first thing in our toolbar better be a new button. That was the example I used earlier. When somebody first downloads your software, you have 5 seconds. If they can't create a new file and if they can't get started in 5 seconds, they're going to the next thing on the list. So in that 5 seconds, there better be a new button in the top left. There better be a couple new buttons in the top left. A couple create new whatever buttons in the top left. That sentence sounded very wrong when I actually heard the words come out of it. Yeah, the starting point needs to be there, or otherwise you wasted the only 5 seconds you had with a potential client. So button new, it's going to be a new button. Do the imports, and to put an image on it, yeah, the textbook always said to do this, right? New. When was the last time you saw words in a toolbar? That's words go in the main menu, not on our buttons. Maybe on the OK and cancel button, but a lot of times those have check boxes, a check mark or an X. So buttons usually have pictures. And we have to do a couple, whoops, what did I just click? Cancel out of that. Move my arm slightly over so I don't bump the lap touchpad. So in that button method or button object, there is a method set graphic, and it's asking for a node, but the node's more complicated than it needs to be, I think. We have several things. Obviously, we need an image. Let's go grab a new file image. A quick, easy thing to draw, but we can Google it. Right, new file image. And there's a whole bunch of them right here. Images, new file. There we go, free icon stock. This one's probably not transparent, but I'll go ahead and save this as what's a good way to say this? Put this one in the source. I'll just try to say it. Put this one in the source folder. Earlier projects when we were reading and writing the text stuff, we put a text file we would read and write to up at the top level of the project, but that's a dynamic file that's not really used in our software. This actually needs to be in the build folder or the bin, but if we put it in the source folder, no matter whether we're using Maven, Gradle, and whatever packaging software we use, if we go ahead and put the images in the source folder, it will get loaded in. When the project gets built, it will get put in the build. Everything in the source folder gets put in the build folder or the bin folder if you go straight to binaries. Which on a Maven project means a whole lot of clicking to get down to that. And I'll save this here as new .ping. Yeah. So we have this file new .ping to serve as our new file button. So that we can load that in as an image, but an image then can't go straight into a graphic. A graphic can only hold certain types of nodes. And yeah, it's a lot of talking. I'm just going to type out the code. So this one that is not in the textbook and it's kind of hard to find. What we can put in a graphic is a new image view. So not the image itself. And the image goes into the image view. So a new image. And getting that image in, okay, I'll just type it. So this, we've seen this keyword before, right? Referring to the thing we're currently making. Well, let's go back to the class file. So not just the object, let's go all the way back to the text file here itself. And from that text file, we can get resource as string. You'll see get resource and get resources stream. Oh, I guess look at over the return type to tell the difference. You look at over the right hand side of the predictive text, you'll notice one of them returns a URL and the other one returns an input stream. So get resource only tells you where that resource is located. It doesn't actually get you the resource. So you want to use get resources string. And then that resources stream is the image file we actually want to bring in. And then get those imports. Let's see, let's move all that out of the way. It's kind of a long line. It's hard to explain what's going on there. Just look at it and from the name, well, it makes sense. So it's not just a this thing. We want to take this all the way back to the text file itself, which means go back to the source code, look for any resources, and when the compiler runs through for the final build, it will see that we need the image that is in the source folder, SRC folder, and it will put that in the build file. And then the confusing part is get resource does not return a resource. Get resource returns the address of where you will go find that resource, which isn't actually isn't as useful as what whoever invented that thought it would be, I guess. Now let's repeat this for an open file, btn. Actually, the only thing that's not much is gonna change there, right? I'm gonna copy that, come down here and paste it twice. And this one is gonna be save, open. Before we go typing that in a lot of places, go ahead and just type it. So all we did was the constructor, get the reference name, so we have that reference value there in the original declaration. And then we use one method from it, so it's an easy time to copy and paste that. And now we can go grab our other images. Check over to Google. Open file image. This one work. Save image as, looks like it's in the same place. Oh, whoops. Nope, can't do a web file. I'll try this one. Save image as. Open a new tab, can I save it? That is showing up more and more, and I find it so aggravating that we can't. We can try this. If I go to paint, we can try the copy image button and paste. There we go. That worked, because this I can definitely save as a paint. Save this as a kind of, except it's not a standard, it's a custom platform. It's a security thing. People weren't getting paid for their images, so it's one that doesn't work in other software. Ping and JPEG work in most software. Yeah, it probably will. The comment in the chat room popped up. It's starting to seem like the new Ping or JPEG, and it probably will be there eventually, except that it doesn't work in other software yet. It's not a compatible form of image. without modification. And again, do all of these, and eventually get down to the source folder and call this open. Maybe I have better luck with the save file image. Oh, it says ping and SVG. Okay, this one came out as ping. I bet that grid comes through too. That other aggravating thing about Google Images is it looks transparent, but it's somebody took a screenshot that still has the transparent background there. Which is extra annoying because that's the one you can't even remove. Or that one takes a lot of work to remove. At least 2 or 3 clicks with the magic wand and whatever graphics software. And then again, it should be just those names. Toolbar going horizontally, but if you want to do a hamburger menu, you just put it in a V box instead of an H box and adjust the visibility property between true and false. Logically, otherwise, building the buttons is the same. It just, the difference between the old style and the hamburger is whether it's an H box or a V box. Toolbar is a new H box. And H boxes can hold anything. H box toolbar. So that's why we have to just say get children, because we don't know what sort of thing's going in there. If we know what's going in there, right? Menus get menu items, menu bars get menus, then we can be specific. Then there is a specific method, but if we don't know what's going in there, it'll be get children. All, and then just horizontal, so it goes left to right, and vertical goes top to bottom. BTN new, BTN save, BTN open. So now we can go throw that in our thing, except for one little issue. Our border pane only has one top, then the center, left, right, and bottom. I guess it would be okay if we were doing the hamburger one and stick it down the side. But we want to put it up at the top, so now we need to put those 2 things into a V box. So our main menu and horizontal, our main menu and our toolbars stack on top of each other. And hopefully there's enough of these. This is enough that you can see the patterns and how these go together and build up. And the missing pieces from what the textbook shows versus what a GUI should actually look like. BBX controls. That sounds like a good name for it. And import that. BBX, maybe main controls, because the main menu and the toolbar are the controls that always show. We have lots and lots and lots of controls. That's just our main controls. Well, it's a V box, so get children, add all, and then list out our nodes. Top to bottom vertically. So we want the main menu first. So the MB main or main menu bar. When I type that, I actually think that. I think, okay, main menu bar, so MB main. So I think the whole word and then type it, because Hungarian notation is a little backwards. Because from saying it in English. And then the toolbar, which is already included in the HPX toolbar. And now that's what we want to put in the top of our border pane. BBX main controls. There could have been some middle ground test before I copied and pasted. Oh, what went wrong? This is my first guess on where that went wrong. I don't want to waste time on it. So okay. We're missing a library. Which one is that in? First, I'll have JavaFX download. I think it's under media. JavaFX image view. And JavaFX.scene.image.image view. It does not say what library that's in. So this is actually what went wrong the other day. We have control, base, and graphics. So we're missing some of the JavaFX libraries. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of these. I know I don't need all of them. Oh wait, the ones that don't have base, controls, and graphics. Well, we're not doing FXML in this project. We did that the other day. I'm pretty sure it's in media. Why don't I just bring media over? So I'm going to remember we could drag it, but if we drag it, it won't refactor. And we need it added to the manifest as well. So I'll copy and then click on this folder and paste that in there. Maybe paste. Oh, there's an add dependency button. JavaFX image view. Everything else has a 13, so I'm just going to copy both of those, grab the 13. So notice in Maven, it wouldn't let us even copy and paste that in there. That stuff's controlled for us, so you want to go through menus in your IDE. So it wouldn't let copy and paste happen, so we'll right click, see add dependency. When we click that, what's labeled as query here is actually a search bar that looked like a fuzzy finder. So an intelligent search, it tried to organize it. It didn't do a very good job organizing it. The stuff was somewhere near the top. And then add it from the Maven repository. Let's see if that fixed that problem. I'm not sure which library image view is in. And you'll notice that the only way that we can get our stack trace and the debugging tools with Maven is to go run it in a terminal, which is even more difficult because then we have to type in all of this stuff over here. So using Maven projects, there are times that you will have to debug without the error message. So just start making small changes. I'm just going to change this back to words for now. New, save, and open. The book probably has something about images. You can see if that can get it going. But the problem is which library it's in. There's graphics and media. I will take one more look, but I don't want to waste a lot of time on this. And that kind of covered all of those basic appearance things. JavaFX image. And it should be something from the actual package because that's part of the thing. So OpenFX. Medias. That's under web. Oh, unless I need that win jar. I just noticed that those original ones have win jar. So maybe I need that one. Let's put that in there, take these words out. Nope, that's not it either. Not sure which library it needs to be. I will double check on that and not waste any more time tonight because if I just put words there, we do have the basic view. Unless graphics has been updated. I didn't check to see if they've updated it. Apache is in charge of this. So Apache is really, really good about updating things, especially when they're complicated like that old way of doing that. I will check on that. The words work for now. That's the part I wanted to go over. Those basic components. We get what the user expects. And you see how everything else is just going to be a copy and paste from that. So we need some stuff to happen when we click those buttons. So we still need to look at Lambda events. This is a good place to look at Lambda events. We can also do full action listeners, big complicated string, but when was it? 2014, I think. Java finally got around to adding Lambda events, which is something which has been the standard way to deal with event-driven programming since the late 1950s when event-driven programming was created. Remember that? Those who have seen Python before actually typing the word Lambda. The short version of it is that's telling it to wait. That means we're going to go ahead and put parentheses on our function name or our method name since we're in object-oriented programming. We're going to go ahead and put the parentheses there, but do not run this yet. Wait for an event. Lambda is the standard way to do that, and Java finally brought that in 2014, I think. They even tried to make it look like Lambda. That's not supposed to be an arrow. That's supposed to be like the Greek letter lambda. So they were trying to make it look like that letter instead of writing out the word lambda. So lambda events, which you probably saw in a previous class in a different language. If not, we'll see them soon. They are mentioned in the textbook. But the arrow, it's not an arrow, like a point, a C++ point uses that for a pointer. That we use that instead of a dot if we want to take more direct control over RAM. It's not something we do in Java for those who haven't seen C++. Instead of the dot, right, like button dot set graphic, like it's right there on the screen, we can have more direct control over what's happening in RAM and registers and in our memory with the pointer. So that's one way of dealing with pointers. We use asterisks and arrows. But we don't do that in Java. In Java, we just have the dot. I cut it down to only one way, and they chose the dot instead of the pointer. So that's supposed to look like the Greek letter lambda. I was supposed they could do that. We wouldn't have to type out that word because that's a word where typos happen. But hopefully you'll see how you can take those images and stretch that out into that basic what a GUI should look like. And go ahead and add an edit and help menu because you know those three are going to be there every time. Maybe 5 or 6 more buttons that you know are going to be in the toolbar every time. I will look into that, whatever that image view thing is. I guess that worked out kind of nice to show the downside of Maven because usually Maven works great and everything runs smoothly. We don't have to worry about it, but there's a downside sometimes too that if something's missing, we have to let Maven do it. We can't just. That also includes figuring out what it is. So I'll do some Google searching over the weekend and see if I can figure out those images. It should look something like that, or y'all can do some Google. Y'all know how to do some Google searching, see if you can get those images turned back on, or which library we need to include to turn that back on. When I did that, did it add to the POM file? Yeah. Okay, so I did put it in the manifest. There's another dependencies folder. Could be something in there. It's hard to say where we need to add that at. I'll look and see where we add that library. But otherwise, that is the starting point for the standard appearance GUI. And that way, when you make a piece of software, people will look at it and immediately know what to do with it. Or they will once you get some images in the buttons. I'll have to double check that. Otherwise, I guess that's only about 10 minutes early tonight, 15 minutes early. So kind of a long night. Then on Tuesday, we will have our buttons do something really quick. And then we'll get into JavaFX tables Tuesday or Thursday next week. And so we can look at observables, which is one of the very, very powerful things we have in the Java programming language. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I assume the silence means no questions. If you have any, let me know. I'm always happy to help. And those files will be up on GitHub in just a couple of minutes. So I'll see you all on Tuesday. Everybody have a great weekend.